So just because you search somebody's residence or vehicle or other property doesn't necessarily mean that that person is your suspect in the crime. It simply means that that place is likely to have evidence related to the crime.
The FBI just dropped a shocking twist. For the longest time, everyone swore David was the monster behind Celeste Riva's tragic end. But after raiding his house and then his car, the evidence flipped everything. Now it looks like he isn't the one who did it. So who set him up? And why would anyone go that far? When the story first broke, people couldn't believe it. A decomposed body found in a Tesla linked to a famous singer? It sounded like a movie script gone wrong. But this wasn't fiction. This was real life. And reality hit harder than anyone expected. It all kicked off on Monday morning, September 8th, 2025. Workers at a Hollywood tow yard noticed a foul odor coming from a black Tesla Model 3 that had been sitting for days. The stench was so strong they had to check it out. That car had Texas plates and was registered under David Anthony Burke, his full government name. The ride had been parked on a Hollywood Hills street for more than 72 hours before somebody finally reported it abandoned. Tow trucks pulled it in, and that's when the nightmare started unraveling. From the start, this whole thing was looking sketchy. Neighbors in the Hollywood Hills had already been whispering that the Tesla kept showing up in different spots for weeks, like somebody was playing parking lot hopscotch. And trust, folks living in those mansions don't stay quiet when strange cars pop up near their driveways. They were clocking that ride long before things blew up.
Huge development in the case involving singer David and the body found in his Tesla. Police have executed a search warrant searching the house he was apparently staying at and walking out with what may well be evidence.
Yeah, well, she was basically talking about how the one of the identifying features of Celeste was a tattoo on her finger, which she specified to us, which we then transferred over to that information to LAPD, was that the tattoo was red.
When the tow yard workers finally opened the trunk, the entire game froze. Inside the front compartment, wrapped in some kind of bag, were human remains, decomposed and dismembered. It was so bad the coroner needed over a week just to figure out who it was. The only reason they cracked the case was a tiny tattoo on her right index finger. And that detail is going to be huge later on. This discovery pulled LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division in fast, letting everyone know this wasn't just a random missing person situation. This was something way darker. The state of the body told investigators one thing clear. It had been inside that Tesla for a long time. We're talking weeks, maybe even months. And that raised some heavy questions about how this went down and who was behind it. Meanwhile, David was nowhere near the scene. He was hundreds of miles away on tour, performing tracks from his withered album. At first, the timing looked like it could save him. David had been on tour for more than a month before the body was discovered, and his team wasted no time blasting statements to the press. They kept stressing that he'd been performing live in front of thousands. So how could he possibly have been tied to what went down? Fans and even industry insiders rushed to back him up. David had carefully built this squeaky clean, family-friendly image, the kind of artist who rose from nothing, making beats on his iPhone in his sister's closet. That underdog story made him easy to root for. His breakout hit, Romantic Homicide, took him from bedroom producer to charting star, landed him with Interscope, and lined up collabs with names like Z and Kaylee S. So when whispers linked him to something this dark, people weren't buying it. His supporters pushed back, saying the idea just didn't fit. David Anthony Burke, born in Houston, had the kind of come-up story that made people believe he was untouchable. He started off dropping Fortnite content online, then shifted into music after needing beats for his gaming vids that wouldn't get flagged. From gamer kid to global stage performer, the journey was supposed to be inspirational. Not wrapped up in a nightmare like this, David's rise felt authentic. A quiet, humble kid grinding his way up, becoming a favorite among younger fans who saw him as real, not some industry plant.
That's why when the news first broke, most people just assumed he couldn't have possibly done it. I even said to a friend when it first came out, I was like, I feel like the Fortnite kid who was pretty normal didn't do something like this, because that was always the impression that I got from him, but that may not be the case.
But once new details started dropping, the whole narrative flipped. LAPD revealed that the Tesla was just one of several cars under David's name, and that plenty of people in his circle had access to them. At first, that sounded like it could take the heat off him. The statement made it seem like anyone in his orbit could have been driving that whip. Management, close friends, even other artists he linked with. But while officials tried to stay neutral, the business world was moving fast. Crocs, Hollister, and other big brands pulled the plug on partnerships almost overnight, even without charges being filed. And when corporations start bailing that quick, you know they're spooked by something they're hearing behind closed doors. Then came the real bombshell. TMZ got their hands on the victim's mother, and what she revealed changed everything. She confirmed the tattoo on the remains matched her daughter's, but then she dropped a detail nobody saw coming. Her daughter had been dating someone named David before she disappeared. That revelation flipped the entire case upside down and had everyone looking at David in a whole new light. That revelation sent investigators into overdrive, scrambling to piece together a timeline that exposed details darker than anyone expected. The victim was officially identified as Celeste Rivas Hernandez from Lake Elsinore, California. She had been reported missing more than once throughout 2024, with her last disappearance in April. What shook people the most was the cruel timing. Her remains were found on September 8th, just one day after what should have been her 15th birthday. She never got the chance to celebrate, and the chilling discovery so close to that date had investigators asking if the timing was deliberate. Was it symbolic? Was it a message from whoever was behind it? Once Celeste's name hit the headlines, the case exploded. Police shifted their attention to a Hollywood Hills house where David had been staying, a property rented by his manager but used frequently by the singer. And here's where it got even more suspicious. That same house sat less than 100 feet from where the Tesla was dumped. The placement wasn't random. It was like the location itself was leaving clues, pointing investigators straight back to the world David was living in. Anyone who really knows how crime works could see the problem right away. Real criminals go out of their way to dump evidence far away from anything that connects back to them. Yet here, we had a Tesla with a decomposed body sitting almost right outside the very house David was staying in. That kind of placement didn't make sense unless somebody was either so sloppy they didn't care, or so panicked they dumped the car in the closest spot they could find. Either way, it raised way more questions than answers. But what really set the streets on fire wasn't just the car, it was the digital proof. As investigators dug deeper into Celeste's case, an entire online trail started to surface, and what it showed was chilling. Piece by piece, a disturbing picture began to form about what had been going down for years between the rising star and the teenage victim.
Also, and I think even more importantly, was that she mentioned that Celeste, at least she was under the impression that Celeste was dating a guy called David, and that she had hung out with him several times before, and that was the last time she saw him.
At first, people thought it was just wild speculation on social media. But then the receipts started piling up. Screenshots, archived chats, and leaked conversations pointed to a connection stretching all the way back to 2021. The most damaging discovery came from David's own Discord server. Hidden inside the archives were years of conversations between David and a user named Celeste, messages that showed this wasn't some random encounter, but an ongoing relationship. Those digital breadcrumbs became the most crucial evidence investigators had. They didn't just prove that David knew Celeste, they suggested their connection had been going on since she was around 11 or 12. That detail was impossible to ignore. To make matters worse, Discord moderators who ran David's fan community later tried to clean things up, claiming they thought Celeste was 18 or 19 and had no clue she was underage or a missing child. But by then, the truth was already out, and the damage to David's image and career was catastrophic. By this point, the evidence was painting a much darker picture than anyone was ready for. The Discord messages exposed behavior that street-smart folks instantly recognized as grooming tactics. Sources who had access to those archived chats claimed the very first contact between David and Celeste happened through Roblox when she was around 11. From there, their conversations slowly shifted to Discord and other private platforms, where things escalated over the years. Anyone who's seen how predators work online knows this pattern all too well. They start on kid-friendly apps, then gradually move things into more secret spaces once trust is built. That exact trail was now staring investigators in the face. Then came the tattoos. And this detail hit investigators hard. Both David and Celeste had identical tattoos on their right index fingers. Detectives began treating it like a hidden symbol of their connection, almost a mark to signify what they were trying to keep secret. Now, of course, the tattoo isn't completely unique. Rihanna, Lindsay Lohan, even Cher Lloyd all have similar designs. But the fact that David and Celeste shared the exact placement, combined with the timeline of when those tattoos were done, had the authorities digging deep. The coincidence felt way too suspicious to brush off. And just when people thought it couldn't get more disturbing, investigators uncovered another layer, one that tied directly into David's music itself. Then came the most chilling piece of all. A leaked demo track allegedly recorded by David in December 2023. The title, Celeste, and the lyrics, they were obsessive, disturbing, and downright incriminating. One line went, "Oh Celeste, the girl with my name tattooed on her chest, smell her on my clothes like cigarettes. I hear her voice each time I take a breath. I'm obsessed." When investigators saw those lyrics, alarms went off immediately. Not only did they seem to reference the matching tattoos, but the obsessive language suggested a relationship that crossed boundaries in a major way.
And that's just one of many images, moving and still, that have been popping up all over social media in the last couple of weeks. There seems to be a really strong digital footprint showing them in various locations, backstage at his concerts, doing his live stream, and various still images taken in various places, going back at least to early 2024.
What made it even more alarming was the timeline. If this track was really recorded in late 2023, Celeste would have been only 13 or 14 at the time. That detail alone had investigators demanding answers about what was truly happening behind the music. But that wasn't the only red flag. People online quickly started connecting dots between David's music releases and Celeste's life. His breakout video, Romantic Homicide, dropped on September 7th, 2022, the exact date of Celeste's birthday. At first, some chalked it up to coincidence. But then fans and bloggers dug deeper and noticed a pattern. Major releases landing right around her birthday again and again. This wasn't random marketing strategy. It didn't look like chart positioning or label timing. Instead, it suggested something more personal, more calculated, and more obsessive. To many, it looked like David was weaving Celeste directly into his music, marking her presence in ways only insiders would catch. That detail shook the industry and had the streets buzzing, because if true, it meant the obsession wasn't just private, it was public, hidden in plain sight through his art. The idea that David was timing his biggest music drops around Celeste's birthday suggested something far deeper than coincidence. For a professional artist, that type of pattern was unusual. And to many, it was a sign that their connection was way more personal than anyone first thought. But the digital trail didn't stop at Discord or unreleased tracks. Online sleuths uncovered photos and videos showing David with a girl who strongly resembled Celeste. In most of them, her face was conveniently hidden or turned away, almost like someone didn't want her fully identifiable. Then came the most damaging leaks. Alleged iCloud content that seemed to show David and Celeste together on multiple occasions. These weren't just one-offs either. The images pointed to different places: backstage at shows, private homes, and even what looked like casual hangouts. Each piece added another layer to the theory that this wasn't a fleeting connection. It was ongoing and consistent. One piece of evidence had the internet going wild: a joint live stream allegedly recorded in January 2024. In it, David and Celeste appeared on camera together, chatting with fans, answering questions, and acting unusually comfortable with one another. Viewers who caught it swore the energy between them felt too familiar to ignore. The stream later disappeared, deleted without explanation, and that fueled even more suspicion. If this one clip was removed, what else had been scrubbed from public view? The thought that evidence was being hidden or erased only made the theories grow louder. For investigators and fans alike, it raised the question, just how much digital proof had already been covered up? One of the most shocking pieces of testimony came not from police or investigators, but from a former teacher at Celeste's middle school who went viral on TikTok. This teacher explained that Celeste had told classmates about meeting David online when she was only 13. According to the testimony, she even ran away to Hollywood to be with him, only to be found by police and sent back home. But by 2024, she disappeared again. That revelation was crucial because it added independent confirmation of a connection between David and Celeste. Coming from a professional with no reason to invent details, it gave the timeline more weight and credibility. And the fact that this story had been shared in class as part of an online safety warning meant at least some adults already knew something about Celeste's situation, raising serious questions about whether enough had been done to protect her. Records showed Celeste had been reported missing at least 4 different times in 2024, each disappearance possibly tied to her relationship with David. That disturbing pattern pointed to an escalating cycle that authorities later linked directly to the tragedy.
He trained you.
No, you didn't.
That's controversial.
It's controversial of kids.
Really good.
Okay,
It's been a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Mwah, 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 mwah. Oh my! Delete everything. Delete everything. Everything goes.
But perhaps the most chilling detail came from her own brother. He told investigators that the last time he saw Celeste, she was leaving their family's home to go see a movie with someone named David. They were riding in the same black Tesla that would later become the site of her discovery. That revelation sent shivers through everyone following the case. The same vehicle that had been used for something as innocent as a movie outing ended up becoming the place where her story ended, turning a symbol of freedom into a tomb. Celeste leaving home willingly was already disturbing enough, but what investigators uncovered next about David's online behavior made things even darker. Social media analysts started digging into his TikTok reposts and found content that suddenly took on a whole new meaning. Mixed in with the usual clips were videos filled with violent undertones, obsessive love themes, and imagery that felt way too close to what was unfolding in real life. One repost in particular stood out, a video about jealousy and violence in relationships. Another allegedly contained references to cannibalism and consuming a partner. At the time, some fans brushed it off as edgy art, but once Celeste's story came to light, those same clips were seen as prophetic and deeply disturbing. When investigators put it all together, the Discord logs, the tattoo connection, the unreleased track, the live streams, and now his repost history, the picture became undeniable. This wasn't just contact between David and Celeste. It looked like a systematic grooming process that escalated step by step, from innocent online contact to hidden communication, to physical meetings, disappearances, and finally, tragedy. Then came the turning point, September 17, 2025. LAPD homicide detectives rolled up to the Hollywood Hills house where David had been staying, armed with a full search warrant. This wasn't a polite knock and talk. This was a full-scale raid that stretched for hours, involving multiple specialized units combing through every inch of the property. And what they pulled out of that house? It flipped the entire investigation on its head and changed the course of the case forever. Securing that search warrant was no small feat. Investigators had to prove to a judge that the Hollywood Hills property was directly tied to Celeste's death, and that evidence of a crime would be found inside. The fact they cleared that legal hurdle meant one thing: authorities already had serious evidence linking the house to the case. And this wasn't just any home. Detectives stormed a $4.1 million luxury property, rented under David's manager, but used by David himself. at a staggering $20,000 a month.
Well, in order to get a search warrant, you need to be able to articulate to a judge that you have probable cause to believe crime has been committed and that evidence of that crime is going to be found in the place that you intend to search. So just because you search somebody's residence or vehicle or other property doesn't necessarily mean that that person is your suspect in the crime. It simply means that that place is likely to have evidence related to the crime.
What made the raid even more chilling was its proximity to the crime scene. The abandoned Tesla was left less than 100 feet from the front of this house. That detail raised questions that couldn't be ignored. Why would a car tied to such a disturbing discovery be dumped practically on his doorstep? Was it reckless carelessness? A panic move made under pressure? Or something even darker? The preparation behind this raid was meticulous. Investigators had spent weeks collecting evidence, cross-checking timelines, and building a case solid enough to withstand legal scrutiny. Legal analysts quickly weighed in, stressing that judges don't hand out warrants for high-profile properties like this without rock-solid probable cause. To get approval, detectives had to prove not only that a crime occurred, but also that tangible evidence would be found right there in that house. So when the green light was given, it signaled one thing clear as day. Law enforcement already had powerful leads tying this luxury residence to Celeste's fate. And once the raid went down, what they pulled from inside forever changed the trajectory of the case. During the raid, investigators hauled out multiple computers, hard drives, phones, and entire evidence bags packed with electronics. These devices were seen as the crown jewels of the investigation. Digital forensics experts immediately got to work, combing through years of messages, photos, and hidden files that could reveal the true nature of David and Celeste's connection. What detectives expected to find inside those drives was nothing short of explosive: a full record of their interactions. Deleted texts, private chats, photographs, even encrypted messages could all help establish not only the timeline, but also the depth of their relationship. Every click, every file, every conversation had the potential to tell a story investigators were desperate to piece together. But one of the most revealing parts of the raid wasn't just what they seized. It was what they were looking for. Sources close to the case confirmed that detectives weren't only after digital evidence, they were also hunting for blood. That detail shook people to the core because it suggested police believed the house itself might have been the scene of Celeste's death, or at least the place where her body was handled before ending up in the Tesla. The search was meticulous. Investigators brought in luminol testing and advanced forensic tools designed to expose biological evidence invisible to the human eye. Even if surfaces had been scrubbed spotless, chemical reactions could light up microscopic traces that linger for years. Detectives focused on high-risk areas, rooms where a body could have been concealed, cleaned, or stored before being moved. Each corner of that $4.1 million property became a potential crime scene, and the possibility of what they might uncover sent shockwaves far beyond Hollywood. Investigators combed through every inch of that Hollywood Hills mansion: basements, garages, freezers, and hidden storage spaces, searching for any trace that human remains could have been kept there.
And it is the most insane thing I've ever heard. The story, the most insane thing I've ever heard. The reason why I say this is because, like, there is not really ever a circumstance where the best case scenario is that this person is just a pedophile kidnapper, and the worst case scenario is that he's a pedophile kidnapper who also murdered someone.
The advanced state of decomposition inside the Tesla raised chilling questions. Just how long had Celeste been gone, and where had her body been stored before it ended up in that car? The timing of the raid was no accident. It came just one day after Celeste's identity had been officially confirmed, proving detectives had been quietly building their case for weeks. The precision suggested heavy surveillance. Investigators likely knew who was coming and going from the residence and had been gathering intel long before they kicked down the door. But what happened after the raid had people talking even louder. Within days, moving trucks were spotted outside the mansion. David abruptly broke his lease, cleared out the property, and walked away from the $4.1 million rental that cost him $20,000 a month. To outsiders, the move looked shady, like a panicked attempt to distance himself from a house that had just been torn apart by homicide detectives. Some speculated it was fear. Others believed it was calculated, possibly legal advice to sever any ties to the location before investigators uncovered something worse. But either way, the optics were bad. Leaving behind a high-priced home so suddenly, right after a raid, only fueled suspicions that David knew more than he was letting on. And as detectives dug deeper, their spotlights shifted. Not just onto David, but onto the people closest to him, his inner circle. That's where his bodyguard, Mark Morales, entered the picture. David's bodyguard wasn't the only one under the microscope. Soon the FBI itself got involved, signaling that the case had officially gone beyond just LAPD. Federal agents stepped in, raising suspicions that the investigation might include interstate elements, like transporting Celeste across state lines, or other factors serious enough to trigger federal jurisdiction. That alone took the case to another level. Meanwhile, people in David's LA circle later admitted they thought Celeste was his 19-year-old girlfriend. According to them, she had been using fake IDs to slip into age-restricted clubs and venues, fooling many into believing she was older. This revelation painted a disturbing picture of just how easily Celeste had been moving in adult spaces despite being underage. It also raised hard questions. How many people around David knew the truth and chose to look the other way? And how deep did the cover-up really go? Then came one of the most damaging blows to David's defense: private investigator Steve Fisher's independent analysis. Fisher suggested that while Celeste's actual cause of death could have been an overdose, that didn't erase the fact that a crime had taken place. His words cut straight to the point. She didn't end up in that vehicle by herself.
A lot of people are going to be asking the very obvious question of, why hasn't David been brought in at least for questioning? Law enforcement doesn't have the answers they want in order to be able to confront or question David, especially without an autopsy report as to the cause and manner of.
Fisher's digging revealed something even more damning. David's manager, Josh Marshall, allegedly knew as far back as 2024 that Celeste was listed as a missing person. That detail blew apart any claims of ignorance. If Josh knew, then continued contact with her could support serious charges, from harboring a runaway to contributing to the delinquency of a minor. And if prosecutors could prove that knowledge extended deeper into David's camp, the fallout would be massive, even if a homicide charge proved harder to lock down. The case took another wild twist when David's mother, Colleen Burke, was photographed outside a Texas gun shop clutching an AR-15 manual. It was her first public sighting since the scandal erupted, and while investigators never linked it directly to the case, the image alone stirred fresh controversy. Was the family preparing for potential threats? Was it heightened security? Or simply a display of their rights during a storm of scrutiny? Either way, the timing sent the internet into overdrive. The photo also showed Colleen walking alongside an unidentified male companion, believed by some to be private security. To many, it symbolized how even David's family was being swept into the chaos, and how far they were willing to go to brace themselves against the backlash. Meanwhile, David's professional life was collapsing in real time. Interscope Records put every promotional effort on pause, while his management team went completely silent. Tour dates were systematically canceled, leaving fans with useless tickets and venues scrambling to deal with the fallout. The financial damage was massive, millions of dollars lost, and thousands of disappointed fans left hanging. But the ripple effect didn't stop there. The music industry itself began distancing from him like he was toxic. Artists who once celebrated working with David started pulling back. Kaylee S. publicly announced she was working to have their collaborations scrubbed from streaming platforms, while other big names quietly canceled planned projects before they even saw daylight.
The latest thing to happen was the alleged brother of the victim, who was followed by David, was found. People started DMing him and asking him questions, which I think is a bit too far. Like, this guy's definitely grieving right now that his sister's body was just found.
What was once a rising star's unstoppable momentum had now turned into a career implosion. And the deeper the investigation got, the faster his empire crumbled around him. The speed at which the music industry cut ties with David made one thing clear: insiders were hearing things the public wasn't. Whatever information was circulating behind the scenes made it impossible for brands, labels, and fellow artists to keep standing next to him without risking their own reputations. At the same time, the legal process was grinding forward. The biggest sticking point? The official cause of death. For now, it remains deferred, pending full autopsy results. Legal experts explain that without clear forensic proof of homicide, prosecutors can't push takeout charges. At best, they could move on lesser counts tied to evidence tampering, obstruction, or other crimes surrounding the case. That delay has fueled anger. Many people following the story believe the circumstantial evidence is already overwhelming and want immediate charges. But veteran prosecutors and defense attorneys caution otherwise. High-profile cases demand airtight proof, especially when the accused has money, lawyers, and influence to fight back. Rushing forward without a flawless case risks disaster. If the state fails at trial, double jeopardy protections could block any chance of bringing charges again. That means investigators only get one clean shot at justice, and they're not about to blow it. Meanwhile, tragedy gave way to mourning. On September 23rd or 24th, Celeste's body was released to her family, allowing funeral arrangements to finally be made. After months of not knowing, her loved ones at least had some measure of closure. But even in grief, questions still hung heavy. Who was truly responsible, and when would justice finally come? Community vigils in Lake Elsinore have turned into powerful memorials for Celeste, with hundreds of residents gathering to honor a young life stolen far too soon and to demand accountability for her death. Candles, posters, and emotional speeches filled the streets as neighbors made it clear: justice must be served. The public reaction has been relentless, especially online. Social media has exploded with campaigns calling for justice, amplifying Celeste's name and keeping the pressure on investigators. But alongside the calls for accountability, the case has ignited wider conversations about child safety online, particularly on platforms like Roblox, where Celeste's first contact with David allegedly began. Advocates warn this tragedy is a sobering reminder of how predators can manipulate even kid-friendly apps to reach vulnerable youth. For Celeste's family, the heartbreak has been doubled by harassment. Reports say her brother has faced waves of online investigators and social media users digging for answers, often crossing the line into cruelty. It's a grim example of how internet vigilantism can spiral out of control, interfering with official investigations and adding trauma to families already in pieces. Meanwhile, the entertainment industry is being forced to face ugly questions of its own. Record labels, managers, and insiders are now being asked, how much responsibility do they bear in monitoring their artists? The fact that people in David's circle claimed they thought Celeste was an adult suggests either deliberate deception or dangerous willful ignorance. This case is far from over. Forensic analysis continues, and legal proceedings could shift at any moment. What began as a missing person report has transformed into a national scandal, exposing the dangers of online grooming, the accountability of celebrities, and the responsibility of communities to protect their most vulnerable. Thanks for watching. And if you want to stay locked in as this story unfolds, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the latest updates.